Hey everyone, welcome to the June 16th GitOps Working Group Principals Committee. Um, I'm Scott, I'm moderating this today, and we have a lovely cast of characters with us today. Um, I'll post the link to the discussion in the Zoom chat. And yeah, and for those who don't have access to, or who aren't following along with the chat recording, you can always find that in the meetings um, .md file in the GitOps working group GitHub repo. So I propose one agenda item. There's other slots for agenda items, but I might as well go ahead and say it. If no one else has an announcement or something they want to say first. Okay. Um, so, I had also discussed this with Dan already and Leonardo. So it's not a brand new idea, but I said I would propose it in the meeting. So the basic idea is, in order to continue the momentum of what we have, for the people who are interested enough to show up to these, and continue working on the principles and content generally that either spawned from or related to the work that went into our initial drive for the principles. I'm thinking that to hold everyone's attention, including my own, I want to get back to some sort of productive process. I think it was good what we've done. We reached our goal. We reached our initial goal anyway. We created a pre-release of the principles. There's certainly some refinement that can be done. For example, I think Dan proposed at one point that we just simplify the one line for each of them. Instead of saying the principle of, we just have the principles and then just say what they are. I think that's a good idea. Things like that. So there's lots of room for refinement, even if we stick with the exact, really exactly the wording that we have now. It's really just stylistic refinement at this point. However, there's other things that were in that pull request that we decided, hey, we're just going to focus only on the baseline of the principles first and then move from there, in principle fashion, right? So we've done that. And my suggestion is this. How do you all feel about going through the content that we already had in draft form and just looking at it together as a group and parsing two things I'm thinking. One, is it useful? Is it definitely not useful anymore? If or at least for now, if not, we can just kind of strike it out for the moment and just be like, okay, cool, next. Is it possibly useful? If so, we can just kind of put it in a possibly useful category for going back over later in more detail. Is it definitely useful? And I was just thinking that could be helpful in helping us prioritize. And secondly, where would it be useful? Do we know? Would it be good as a glossary item? Would it be good is it really a use case? Would it be good for now to just leave as a note in the temporary notes section on the principles or some other supporting doc? That's my suggestion. Anybody have any thoughts about that or some other process or
I think that makes sense. And there's been several things that we discussed throughout these meetings, like getting certain things down, like processes and everything like that. That we probably should create a list or put on the agenda, as I said last time. And that can come from if we take on smaller parts of the principles and kind of look at what we've written in the markdown HackMD and see and just create a list of action items, to-do list, what we can do throughout this meeting, so we can populate the meetings ahead with stuff.
Chris?
So much easier. So I'm wondering about the going forward with this principles committee, because we have the PR approved, We have the first draft of the principles out there. Seemed like the next major practical step was to, based on those principles, we're going to need to get into the open GitOps. We're going to need best practices. We're going to need reference architectures.
Yeah.
So then I'm starting to wonder, what is the purpose of the principles committee then? Are we going to, now that the draft is out, are we going to take feedback from the overall group and make adjustments? And so I'm just trying to figure out what our goals are at this point as a principles committee.
Yeah, and what we had talked about, Scott and Leonardo and I, was now that these principles are here, so far we haven't had a huge reaction from the community. People have been like, okay, but I think we'd love to see a little bit more passion one way or the other. And so one thing that we were thinking is if everybody could take a couple of the people they trust and send this to them and say like, hey, can you give me your feedback on this? Do you think this is compelling? Do you think it's right? Do you think we're missing anything? Does it just ask all of these questions and then bring back the feedback we get from people and think about ways that we can improve it and make it stronger. I think that's kind of a big next step that needs to happen. For the reference architectures, I think you're dead on, and that's going to have to be a larger effort. The website should be ready, I think, next week is the plan. And there right now is just a stubbed off section for use cases or patterns. That's basically reference architectures. The idea is that we need to come up with a format that people can submit. So if someone wanted to take on like, hey, here's how we want to accept those. We want to have, you need to have a diagram, you need to have some text, whatever. Here's some policy we can put together for how these are accepted. We should have people vote on them or whatever. But something that people can, I think ideally we would have a whole library of these, and every company that claims to do GitOps would submit theirs and say, hey, here's how we're doing GitOps. Here's how to do our, like I want CodeFresh to put in and say, hey, here's how to do CodeFresh plus AWS plus Kubernetes plus whatever. And here's how to do CodeFresh plus serverless. And here's how to do, all of these different things so that people can just search for a reference architecture for the ingredients they want. We can show them, hey, here's how we do it. So we do need to come up with a format for that. But I think first getting the principles matured is key. So seeking people to kind of put together like some reports and commentary, and even if it's just, hey, I'm going to open an issue, please go comment on it. Or if it's soliciting it personally and then coming back and reporting it. But I think we should collect a bunch of those, because right now, even though it's been done with the community and quite a few people have contributed to it, I still feel like it's small. I still feel like it's not wide enough yet. So I would say, yeah, feedback is the next big step.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I know William has his hand raised. Chris, did that cover? I know Dan was responding to what you were saying. Did that cover?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. So the evangelization is a perfect next step. I'm wondering, where's the best place to point folks who don't have access to the repos, or so that they can look through our draft in a readable form? What's the story there?
Well, I think what Dan was saying is that the website's going to come. The first version of it should be next week.
Okay. So then, okay. So schedule-wise, we'll wait till the website's there and then point people to it. Okay.
Or until then, copy paste.
Okay. Right.
Email or whatever. Okay.
Got it.
Sorry, that was just my quick response to what you were saying. I didn't want to stop.
No, I think it's perfect to wait for the website, and then we can get feedback on the principles from that in a super easy to read format.
Cool. Okay. William.
Yes. So principles for me is the essence, is what makes that thing be what it is. Okay. So isn't it the case that again, they're very basic, right now, but through the discovery on this reference architecture, blueprint, template, or whatever, we will discover if there are common essence we have not covered yet without having to modify, meaning shouldn't be based on the type of use cases, the type of the panels that we are seeing there that describe what the principles, I mean, adjust the principles and not just get feedback directly from the principle in isolation of how they're used or consumed. Yes. Thinking about this process of getting feedback versus using that other activity to get the feedback.
I personally agree, and I think it can be a dual-pronged effort. If you want to say that. You know, for example, the proposal to go through the material that was originally written in and around the principles. Not originally written, but it was drafted earlier. Had a lot of comments on, but just we moved to syncing sessions, in-person syncing sessions, to help just resolve the foundational principles initially, so that it was actually agreed upon by the group. And I believe the intention was to continue to go back to those other to the other material and add more material too, for example, but just including the use cases you're talking about, William, and you know, how those principles are then extended into other things and exemplified, and you know, other supporting documents. We can do that and evangelize this at the same time. Maybe not in the same second, you know, but I'm definitely going to do what Dan suggested and try to pick some people to get feedback from who aren't already part of this working group. It's a little bit tough because most of the people that I know who are really interested in this have already like tried to invite to the working group. But still, I'm sure there are people, if we actually think about it and try to reach out.
There are a lot of people like in the Norwegian in the tech sphere that do things that are GitOps and do work on these things, but they aren't very active in CNCF, for instance, and don't know that things are happening. So I'm just going to mass send out to a lot of people that I know of to get some feedback there. We'll see what happens.
That's awesome. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. That it was mentioned in past meetings. I think the last one, and I kind of regretted mentioning it because we just sort of had a debate circle a little bit, and then I was just like, hey, forget it for now. But I would, you know, we had recently renamed the GitOps Con committee to the events committee because it was clear that it needed to be a bit broader than just that one event, and to cover other events related to GitOps. Some that the events committee organized, and others they did not. You know, and in that case, it was the GitOps working group evangelizing, curating even other relevant events that follow GitOps principles that relate to GitOps, right? So, in this case, what I had mentioned last week was, well, in the spirit of that, once the principles are initially drafted, should we change the name of this group to just something like, you know, I think I said like the documents team, just because that's what we decided to name our repo, but you know, I think Dan suggested, or the content team or something like this, right? Documents team didn't sound very sexy, but regardless of whatever it is, that was a suggestion, and I'm mentioning it now not to propose that again now, but just to say that, you know, we can certainly do that whenever it's necessary. Like, these committees are just, you form them, you unform them as needed. The only reason we even call them committees is just to give ourselves a little structure within the group. So that is my point. What action items should come from that? Probably nothing, unless someone has a strong opinion about it. I just wanted to say that I agree that there's still work to be done on evangelizing these principles, but also, you know, that other content is important and deeply related. So I'm ready, personally, once we all feel that we want to dive into that, I'm ready to do that, either sometime on this meeting or the next meeting, if we feel like we want to do a little more strategic planning around the evangelism. But Okay, I'm off for now. Christian? Oop, you're muted.
Sorry, there we go. I lowered my hand, but then forgot to unmute. As far as the renaming, re-architecting, I don't know what we want to call it, but I think that would depend on I forget who said it. I think it was I forgot who said it. Sorry, I'm on my mobile. It would depend what our end goals, like, well, what's our actually like goal, right, in terms of this, in terms of this, right, like who we are, you know, what where our goals are trying to do, right? And maybe it's just like, maybe we should just like rename it like evangelism, right? Like the evangelism or something like that. But it would depend on, like, you know, the renaming or restructure would depend on what the goals is. It's all. I'm not against it or for it or anything like that. I was just like, we need to, I think eventually, maybe that this is a next meeting thing, is define, you know, what our you know, principles as a committee or as a group is going to be, like what our end goals are, and then use that to dictate how we structure it. So that's all.
Cool. Dan?
Well, so I thought maybe since we're talking about like what a restructuring would even look like, I would share a PR that I opened today. This is my quick attempt. I actually was working on this for a blog post, and so I wanted to cite the principles, and I just found it awkward to continually state the principle of, and so instead I changed it to an imperative. Use declarative infrastructure for instead of the principle of declarative desired state. Infrastructure is not completely synonymous with desired state. But having it as an imperative feels like a commandment from on high. I don't know. It feels like something you can cite. Like if I'm repeating something, it's felt easier. This phrasing felt easier. And they're all a little bit shorter for the most part. So yeah, interested to have commentary on the PR, or see if you feel like this is a worthwhile effort, or if it opens up too many old wounds at this point.
I think it makes sense to make it easier. I did an internal thing on GitOps at Crayon, and I felt that it was kind of hard to summarize what
you ended up rewriting it yourself.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, okay. And at first I said it, and then I'm like, all right, well, that actually means this, and then have to kind of go over it again. And we spent a lot of time on this, so it's kind of hard to just say like, all right, let's just change it now. But I think it does make sense. I just want people to be able to see the change and comment on it. I think that's
Sorry, Christian?
Yeah, so in principle, so pardon the pun, I like it, right? I actually do think we should make it, I guess, trim it down, right? Make it concise. I do find it, I actually did a presentation internally about the principles, and I did find it, it was kind of weird. It was, I wouldn't say laborious, but it was just awkward to say the principle of, and like define it like 8 different ways instead of just being concise. So I do agree. We need to be concise. As far as the PR concerned, I don't know. I don't know if, maybe you trim it down even more. Like, do we need to use? Maybe that's like just like a use. I don't know if that well, I guess it's less awkward. So I don't know. I'll have to chew on that, on the PR itself. But I do agree, though. Definitely, it is awkward just to kind of keep saying, you know, the principle of. Yeah. So, anyways, that I think that's my half attempt, or many words attempt of just basically saying, yeah, I agree. I don't think it loses, as long as we don't lose anything by trimming it down. I think if the spirit of it is there, I'm for it, definitely.
Great. I think, yeah.
Chris was
Chris
next.
next. Yeah. Then Dan.
Let me take my hand down, lower hand, okay. So, yeah, I agree with that last comment. Use is okay, but I agree that it jars me a little bit, and just having straight out, you know, declarative, immutable, continuous as sort of the header, I think is just fine. And then the sentence below actually has the complete noun verb structure, works for me. The first one, use declarative infrastructure. I think that we'll run into problems about definition of infrastructure to different people and what they have in their minds. To me, desired state covers it all. That's why I like that, you know, those words in there. Because to some people, infra is more of the hardware stack and the base stack of systems, and then the apps and config on top doesn't really necessarily fall into that. But so it all depends on who's reading that, and I wouldn't want to have to define that to different people. Or desired state is just straight up, you either get it or you don't. So that's it.
Dan.
So that's a really interesting idea. I was thinking of use as taking a point of view, because if we just said declarative infrastructure, it's like, use it, don't use it. Like, declarative infrastructure is good, is it bad? Like, how do we? But I do take your point about it could be that each principle, an alternative could be to state them as adjectives. So at the top, it would say principle, like principles of how you should operate, the GitOps principles of how you should operate your software. Your software should be operated, and then declaratively, immutably, reconciled continuously, something like that. That's kind of interesting. Then they all become, they all have an ly at the end. So I don't know, maybe we could do it again.
Yeah, and another fun alternative could be, I'm actually just about to make a review on the comment, but another fun alternative could be something like, instead of use declarative infrastructure or the principle of declarative desired state, it could just be declare desired state. You know, store declarations as immutable versions, continually reconcile, you know, etc. Okay, well, that was my.
Yeah, that's like, sorry, I'll just show you. Like, I was just writing that down to something like this, like these words.
At least that kind of you know, solves the issue of having that repeatable thing. But you know, at the same time, I am a nerd, so the more technical it sounds, the cooler, I guess. So that's probably why I want to keep it. But yeah, it is awkward to talk about it, at least. Yeah.
Cool. let's see. So Chris, then Christian, then Dan. Then
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think the principles are nouns, not adjectives, and that each noun is basically the header for each section. So, to me, a principle of declarative desired state or declarative infrastructure, and then immutable version storage and continuous state reconciliation. Those are nouns basically as a whole that are each principle. And then the descriptor below that, the sentence or two, actually can provide more details of what it is. But to me, that's a principle. To me, is a noun.
cool. Yeah, I guess I was verbifying it in my little suggestion, but I'm not attached to that in any way. Then Christian, then William. Did I miss you raising your hand earlier? Okay. Christian, then William.
I actually wouldn't mind exploring it, like Dan said, as an adjective. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I'm gonna have to chew on it a little bit because I don't think I feel strongly one way or another, but it does make it interesting, at least for me, to think about it as an adjective. Although I do think I guess I'm undecided now, but I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. So I'm just basically plus oneing Dan to try at least exploring it that way.
Okay, William.
Yes, I don't know how much after listening to this, but my proposal was about if something needs to be that, we can follow, for example, there's an RFC that explains how to use the words must, should, based on how imperative or not a particular description or, specification is. And it's our principle. So we could include that at the beginning, like should X, Y, Z, should. But again, if it's noun, it might not be applicable.
Yeah, check this out. I just took this one. Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. All right. Yeah, no one else had their hand raised. I took what you were saying, William, and modified it so it's define state declaratively, use immutable version storage, reconcile state continuously, and then use declaration as the sole way of operating a system. This is the only one that I feel like is still kind of awkward, but these other ones feel we've broken up the use over and over again. But it's still in an imperative, so it's still stating a point of view. Reconcile state continuously is really short and makes sense to me. So yeah, this last one is the only one that I feel like is still kind of too long.
I don't think the need to be shorter just to be shorter. I think that if we have the short principles at the start, and then we kind of I thinking when talking about it, I would use the fourth one then to say like, and this is where we kind of put it all together, and so I don't think the last principle looks too long or too wordy. It that kind of depends on the context and everything like that.
I like those suggestions, Dan. I think they're fine.
Yeah, me too. But I would be a little cautious about just throwing this out there after all the meetings that we had, going over this over and over again. I think we need to get the word out there and get feedback before just saying that this is cool. So if no one else is paying attention at the moment to the repository, they might miss that this is happening and then come back later and see that we kind of just changed everything. Us six. That which doesn't make sense in this case.
Yeah. Cool. What's next?
One comment about Scott about the renaming. I wonder if we just want to keep this committee. Its usefulness will drop off, but there may be changes to principles down the road. But then forming other committees, because you're going to want committees for people who are going to sort of maintain the reviews of the use cases and all that stuff. And there might be a different group of people who are going to sign up for that. So I can actually see just keeping this one, and it'll kind of go stagnant after a while, but it'll be there in case something comes up instead of redoing it.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, good idea. Do we want to make before moving on from this, do we want to add an action item for how to follow up? Like, for example, I was thinking, let's see, we have one action item, which is great. Thanks, Chris. And now maybe solicit feedback, or like just request feedback on this PR. I'm just going to put that because I think we should.
Yeah, I think we need to get the word out about that PR.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we don't do anything hastily.
Yeah. Yeah, we had talked about it. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting that Dan had suggested this, so I'm glad you made this PR. I think like if the goal is to reduce the redundancy or the awkwardness of the lines, just saying the principle of, the principle of, the principle of, that's like a great first reason, but that's my own opinion. So I'll comment on that PR. Just finish the note. But I think Christian has got his hand raised.
Yeah, so my comment, I guess this question, maybe not, doesn't apply specifically to this group, but it does. There is a. So how moving forward, I think I'm asking in terms of the governance, right? Like how do we? So like with Dan's PR, like what is the process of like it getting approved? So like right now, I guess we're small enough to where like we can like ping the individual people that took a part of all this, and but I think looking to the future in terms of governance and how like is there going to be like a review committee? Is there going to be like people whose job is it to basically like be the final word sort of thing, or are we basically just going to get solicit votes to like, yeah, this is good, and then if you didn't vote by a certain time, it's like lazy consensus. So I guess my like I'm just looking into the future in terms of like governance. I don't know if that's been hashed out. I know you guys been working on that for a while.
Quick answer is we do have this outlined. It doesn't go into the level of detail of exactly how specific decisions within each committee is made, but it does also list the committees, and currently the purview of the principals committee is responsible for drafting the revised GitOps principles. And in terms of decision making, there's a section on decision making. Just the very first one was that the working group believes that the best decisions are reached through consensus, and there are some links to how that's defined. So it's not defined as unanimity; it's defined as relatively broad consensus, but it's a fairly informal definition at this moment, because this is not something on which there's you don't start by voting, And so it says, we'll just kind of read through these steps. So basically it's like, you seek lazy consensus ultimately through most decisions. But yeah, if there's something that feels really that it should be relevant to other specific people, you don't want to just abuse that and try to slide something under the wire, like you said, so that someone might not notice. I think, like Robert said, and I think we all agree with. So that's not the goal of lazy consensus. Lazy consensus is just to help with, like decisions that aren't super vital to be able to keep happening. So then anyway, so I think it would be nice in this case to promote this PR, like we'd all agreed that sounds good to do, like in Slack and whatever. We maybe want to put a note on the mailing list if we want to, especially in the early evangelism action item too. So, and then, like we can, even when we solicit feedback from the principals, we could even mention this PR in the same breath and say, there was some feedback already that there may be a bit of a redundant feeling in saying the principle of 4 times, and anyway, then they're just the lists. I don't need to read it all out because I linked to it, but here's a direct link to the decision-making section. And just it basically just outlines the process of when a vote should be called, and what needs to happen if there isn't an agreement reached.
Sweet, that does answer my question. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I feel glad we got that in place. It was actually through some of the earlier principals committee meetings that made us decide to prioritize returning a little bit more of the structure that we initially had it as a draft for the governance, instead of just being so informal about it, so that we didn't just implode through all of the cacophony of opinions.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah, it's almost like other groups have gone through this before, and So, so that came out of the action items question. I think that got answered. How about who feels like requesting feedback from folks in Slack? I certainly don't mind doing it. I also think that it would be nice if someone besides Dan did it, since Dan made the PR. So it doesn't just feel like a unilateral interest. I mean, you're welcome to, Dan. I didn't mean you should not feel free, but at least I know for myself, when I make a PR, I love other people to promote it. Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking as you're kind of like the go-to moderator person, as this is something that came up in a meeting, then it makes sense that you kind of just put it out there and let people know.
Sure, I'll put my name on the action item. Good idea.
Also, we probably should have just put it in as an action item to try to get some feedback on the principles themselves, possibly outside the circle of the GitOps working group.
That's on there. That's the first one on the list. I don't.
All right, yeah.
Since it's kind of for everybody, I didn't put a person next to it. Do we want to have one person that is kind of in charge of just checking back on this progress?
Can just put it on the agenda for next time to recap, see if anyone has anything or something. Sorry, it's 9:45 now, so I'll probably just stop reading at some point. Yeah.
Absolutely. How about this? Then I'll, just because I'm moderating, I'll go ahead and I'll copy the template for next week into this, into the list. I'll put next week's date on it, and in the meantime, does anybody want to volunteer for the assignments for next meeting for moderator and notes? Again, I'm also happy to do that. I'm not trying to.
I can help do the notes. I can do the notes. So that way, looks like you're doing dual today. So I'll do the notes next time.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Also, I'm asking not because I'm trying to bow out of this stuff. I just, just trying to, like I said, spread the love. So, okay. So, notes. So I guess in the absence of another volunteer for that, I'll do it for now. I'll go ahead and just say Scott, unless someone else decides to volunteer it. before now.
In my opinion, Scott, you're doing great. So if you want to keep doing it, that's fine.
All right.
But if you're looking for folks to help, then let us know.
Well, it's good to absolutely. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, I may not be saying it the best way, but let's just say I get sick. You know, like it's good to just kind of rotate a little bit, so at least so that, you know, some people do things more often than others, different things within the group, and that's the way groups work. It's cool. But like it would be nice just to make sure that there, you know, that it doesn't feel like almost like abrupt, like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And I think that already happened before, and I believe Dan took over that one for at least one of the committees. So
one of my main problems with, you know, saying ahead of time that I would do something like that is the fact that this is during the evening for me. So a lot of things can happen. It's not like I, you know, have a total open schedule.
It's more that you do such a great job, Scott, that we're kind of intimidated. But so at least that's true for me, at least. So it's like, you know, Scott's doing it. I don't know if I can live up to how Scott does things. So.
I don't believe it. But I think you do an amazing job. But yeah, I do like doing this kind of stuff. So I'm happy to fill in anytime. So anytime I can. So okay, cool. And also, Robert, we definitely I'm sure I speak for other people, but like really appreciate you joining these meetings in your evening hour. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, so many people in this group do really vital, important stuff. So I just wanted to give other people a chance to do this one if they wanted to, whenever they want to. So, okay, great. I copied this in, so if someone wants to, I guess I'll just put this as a. Wow, my brain's not really working right now. So does someone else want to put at least the topic for circling back to check in on the progress of soliciting feedback? I would appreciate that, and I'll put the date on this. And then
yeah, I probably won't be able to join next week, but in like 2 weeks, I'm happy to.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. Oh, and my Google Calendar froze. What is the date for next week? It's like
23rd, is that?
Yeah, the 23rd? The 23rd. Right? Okay, great. I will add that, and we have our agenda for the 23rd. Do we have any other topics that we want to cover? I know I proposed the going over content, but I think at this point we don't really have enough time to dive into the content. At least I don't feel like it would be super productive. If you all do, that would be cool. But I'm just, I'd almost like to be like, all right, let's really focus for a period of time. What do you think? I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, in the spirit of that, maybe I'm voting for like just ending a little bit early and returning some time to us, so we can just like feel like what we're doing when we're doing it is worth our time coming. So
yeah, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Well, y'all are awesome. We have no more topics, and I will see you next time.
Thanks, gang.
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye.